Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of My Metabolic Life. Today, I am incredibly thrilled that Carol has joined me on the podcast today, and we'll have information at the in the show notes down below here that if you wish to reach out to Carol and communicate, or she's got an incredibly fascinating thing or fascinating career and journey and everything of what she does long before she ever got into the metabolic health space, which is where I found her and where my stuff is. But much of my past and my sister and other people in my family are very a part of her world. So that helped want to draw me in and make sure that I could have Carol on my podcast here. So all things here are everything metabolic, and Carol's got a great metabolic health journey, and it's impacted people around her and others. And I'm going to stop talking because nobody's here to listen to me give an intro. Carol, thank you so much for coming on the podcast with me today. Please start wherever you would like to as far as what all of your metabolic journey is. I did find her on another channel that people are familiar with me on, with Dave Mack at No Carb Life. If you want to go watch another podcast of her that she was just at in the last 2 weeks, you can go find her story there again. And I'm sure it all gets told a little different each time. But Carol, please take it away and introduce yourself and your metabolic journey.
Thank you, Brett. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me on. You're doing such wonderful work in our world, and you're really of service and helping people learn that they can reverse their disease and they can get metabolically healthy. And we need more people like you in our space, bringing this information out. And I'm just delighted to be here. I will give a little background of my life story with my journey of health and wellness and not so wellness. But my actual journey into carnivore began in 2018 with first starting, I think as many of us do, we start with keto, but that doesn't end up being enough. And so then we find the carnivore space. But my health journey goes way back, of course, like many of us, we start in our childhood. I wasn't obese as a child by any means, but I was chubby, and I wasn't the skinny mini, but I was very athletic. I enjoyed sports immensely, the sports that were available back then. Running, I've been a lifelong runner, but I played golf and tennis, and I was a swimmer and on the swim team, and just many. I really enjoyed learning and participating in different sports, and was a bit competitive, especially in golf. I played a lot of tournaments and just loved it. But at age 13, you go through puberty, you're starting to like boys, and all of a sudden I realized, I'm in junior high. I want to look different. I want to, be different. And I put myself on my very first diet at age 13. And back then it was all about just reducing your calories. So that's what I did. I just didn't eat as much. And I'd go in and out of that. You lose the weight and stay off for a while, and then it creeps back on. And I remember in my about 16 or so, I was a lifeguard at the YMCA, and I found if I just didn't eat that day, I didn't realize it was called intermittent fasting like we call it now. I would just fast for a day, and that would help kickstart the weight loss and things like that. So that's for a long period of my early life, the yo-yo dieting style. Of course, I wouldn't admit that I was a yo-yo dieter, right? We never admit that. We just know that, okay, I've gained 30 pounds. Yeah, you're one too, Brett. I bet a lot of the listeners were too, or have been. But I didn't want to admit it. I just thought, I've gained 30 pounds. Well, let's just go on another diet and eat only yogurt maybe, or a banana for breakfast, high carb, right? We didn't know that. And eat a yogurt for lunch and, something for dinner, and run a little further on my runs, and the weight will start to fall off. So that whole cycle of eating less and exercising more started way back at age 13. So your body gets used to it, and you get that mindset of always having to push away from the table a little bit hungry. So you're always hungry too. So that went on for a long time. And then the low fat craze came along. And so I dove into that. And over this time, the weight gains would get higher. So twice now in my life, I've been more than 100 pounds overweight. And one of those times I use Nutrisystem because, when you have that much weight to lose, it's like, how do I do this? It's overwhelming. So I get it, that, why do I have to be the fat one? Why do I have to work so dang hard at this when other people can eat what they want? It just didn't seem fair. So one time on Nutrisystem, I lost 100 pounds. And then, of course, it came back on, and I had four adult children. So through pregnancies, the weight would come back on, even though I didn't, in several of my pregnancies, I was actually quite sick and I couldn't eat very much, but the weight still would come back on. And then um, almost 26 years ago, and when my father was dying, the stress of that, I don't know if you guys remember those chocolate snack cakes you could just mix up and microwave it and then squeeze the frosting on. I'd come home after a day of being with my mom and my dad in the hospital, and I couldn't eat anything, but I'd make one of those and eat one of those. Can you believe it? I mean, but it was all about, high carb, low fat, calories. So at some point, shortly after my dad died, almost 26 years ago, I remember looking in the mirror, and I was at that point 120 pounds overweight. And I looked in the mirror and I said, who the heck are you? This isn't you. So I went to Jenny Craig and I was breastfeeding my last one, my fourth one. I breastfed all my kids, and I went to Jenny Craig, and they put me on a 1,700 calorie diet, and I lost the weight, sure. And I started running more again. And
what number was that? How many calorie?
It was 1,700.
How many calories was that?
17.
Okay, well, and that's okay.
But I was breastfeeding, so I should have been getting more.
Right.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, because you're giving so much. Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So
I
got back into my running, and then I started weightlifting and going to the gym, and weight came off, and I became a spokesperson for our local Jenny Craig and all those things. They work. Those plans work short term, but they don't work long term. We know that. And that's what their business model is. Like Weight Watchers, they get you coming back and coming back, coming back. And then for a while, with all my exercise that I was doing, I was also teaching kickboxing aerobics at a local gym, and still running. During the early 2000s, from like 2000 to 2010, I trained for and ran some marathons with friends. I wasn't a fast runner. I think my fastest time was a 4-hour marathon, but I was proud of that. And but again, I still had to work hard to keep my weight down. It still was a struggle, even with all that exercise. During that time, I did try other methods of eating. I've tried vegetarian for 3 years. And I'll come back to that story in a minute, Brett. But I'd been vegetarian in college for a year and in my late 20s. And then at this time when I was in my 40s at that time. And it seems like that's when it hits a lot of people. They hit that 40 mark and they go, what's happening with my body? Well, and we want to really get active and healthy again. Well, I've kind of been that way all my life. And anyway, I tried vegetarian for 3 years, and it just wasn't enough. I also, though, during that time, tried the Atkins diet because I had a friend at the gym who came to me and she said, Carol, I know this is different than what you think you should be eating, but try it. And she says, it really works. And I did have some success on it. I think I dropped like 15 pounds. But what caught me was with Atkins, you could eventually start adding in their products, the shakes that they make and the bars, the processed food. Then I stalled out. Then I didn't have any more success.
Just for Robert Atkins' sake, and he passed 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
It was after he passed that his family, making money on his name, started offering the processed crap that,
And
just
that's
like we now see all of the keto label crap that's in the
yeah.
stores,
And
trying to
it's
play
still
on the confusion for people. So anyhow, I just wanted to because that's not what his intention or
I
book was
know
about.
he really
Book
had good
was
intentions.
of making money after his passing. So anyhow,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, and plus, there's so much misinformation about him. People say he died from a heart attack. No, he slipped on ice, fell, and hit his head. And when I tell
Right outside
people,
his office.
yeah. So I mean, he really was a forerunner, a forethinker in this field. And if you really followed it correctly, I think it was sustainable. He did add back in a lot more vegetables and carbs gradually. But it was the basis, right? And it did work if you didn't add back in all those products, right? So just experimenting, trying different things. But when in 2018, I moved I raised my kids in Iowa. I was born and raised in Dubuque. I think I told you before we got on. So I'm a Midwesterner, but I've always loved the desert Southwest and vacationed here since I was in college. So my partner and I moved to Arizona in 2018, the very beginning of 2018. But at that point, I was really starting to have more physical issues, and I didn't know if it was due to stress. I'd been through a divorce in 2012 and had built up a pretty good sized regional business when I was still in Waterloo, Iowa, Waterloo, Cedar Falls. And now I was leaving all of that and moving to Arizona, but I was having a lot of health issues. I'd had chronic joint pain in my shoulders for a long, long time and had rotator cuff surgery, trying CrossFit with shoulders that were metabolically unhealthy. Well, yeah, you tear your rotator cuff muscle. And so I had surgery on that. I had chronic pain, almost frozen shoulder in my right shoulder, neck pain, low back pain, hip pain, you name it. But I was having a lot of metabolic issues. I didn't call it that at the time. I didn't realize that's what it was, Brett. But my chronic UTIs, migraines, lots of fatigue. Like I just didn't have energy. So low libido, and you know what? Your libido doesn't have to drop when you age. It can be just as good or better as when you were in your 20s. So I give you that. So I found, instead of going to a medical doctor like an MD or a DO, I found a naturopath, because in Arizona, naturopathy is legal. In Iowa, it wasn't. There weren't any naturopaths. So in Arizona, I found one, and through testing, she found that I had very low thyroid and different things. So we tried different things, but still nothing was really working. We tried medication. I get sensitive to medications, which I'm sure a lot of people do, and I just didn't care for the medication. So I was out for a run one day in May of 2018, and I was listening on my headphones to Dr. David Perlmutter and Dr. Alberto Villoldo talking about keto. And I'd been hearing of keto, the scuttle was there on social media, and I had a curiosity. But when they talked about how it affects your brain, the ketones, and how it can prevent things like Alzheimer, dementia, and other health issues, I just like, zing, this is a no-brainer. Why wouldn't somebody try this? And the fact that there could be associated weight loss. And so I came in the door from that run at the beginning of May of 2018 and announced to my partner, I'm going keto right now. So I did. I switched to keto. And as far as weight loss, yeah, I could at that point wanted to lose maybe 15, 20 pounds, but I wasn't doing it for the weight loss. I was doing this to feel better. I didn't have the energy to, moving from Iowa to Arizona, I needed to revamp my business. I had to start anew with it. And I just didn't have the energy. I just was chronically tired and was pushed myself to get out and get some exercise, thinking that would help. So with the keto, that did it. The brain fog went away right away. More clarity and more energy. But I stalled. I did lose some weight. I did lose about 15 pounds, but I was still having the UTIs. I was still having other, the joint pain. And so at one point that summer, my partner Scott said, there's this group called Zero Carb. I've found on the internet, and he also found Dr. Kevin Stock, who's a dentist, who was a real and still is a very much a proponent of the carnivore diet. He says it's like a subset of keto. And I'm like, I want to try that. Let's give that a try. So in August of 2018, and he said he'd do it. My partner said, I'll do it with you. I want to try this too. So
real quick, when you said you first jumped in with keto, what kind of carb limit were you kind of targeted? What was your guidance there?
I was targeting to be about 20 grams per day, 30 at the most.
Total or net?
So I was trying to do total because I knew there was a difference that net isn't really true. You have to go with total carbs, right?
Right. Okay.
But on that, I did get kind of caught up in trying recipes where you use a lot of almond flour or things like that, not realizing that was really overloading my body with toxins. And we'll talk about oxalates in a little bit too, because that was part of this journey. So
it caught up with me too.
Yeah, it does. It does over the years. Sally Norton is onto something there, isn't she, with her oxalate?
Book right there.
Yep, toxic superfoods. Yeah. So my partner Scott said, I'll do it with you. And so in August, we went the full carnivore. Now we were following Dr. Kevin Stock. At that time he had a 3-tiered plan where you eat any animal products, right? Dairy, cheese, butter, all the different meats. And then he had the second level was you cut out dairy. And then the third level that if you needed to was just beef, ruminant meat, beef, red meat, and water. And so I tried the full carnivore, but was still having some issues. And my naturopath had done some testing, some more testing, and came back with, you have severe leaky gut and candida overgrowth. And doing an elimination diet like the red meat and I think she was thinking short term, right? Because a lot of naturopaths tend to be plant-based. So she was okay with me trying this strict carnivore, as we call it. That's what there wasn't the Lion Diet name that Michaela Peterson gave it later. I just called it strict carnivore because it was just beef and water. Yeah. And she warned me that I might be sick for a little bit. And she was right. I did have that Herxheimer reaction. So end of August of 2018, I went strict carnivore. I let go of coffee, which, I do like my morning cup of coffee, but I let it go. And I let go of all dairy, other meats like bacon. I just went to beef and water. And I was sick for about 10, 12 days. The flu, the diarrhea thing, the whole works. And I could barely eat, but gradually was able to eat some ground beef and some bone broth. When we make bone broth, we make our own so that it doesn't have all the additives that store-bought bone broth has. Yeah. We like that occasionally, especially when Arizona cools down, which it's starting to, a little fall weather. We'll probably make a batch of bone broth. But that's what I ate for a while until I started to feel better. And then I could add in a little more burger and then eventually some steaks. But I was mainly eating just burger and ribeyes as I went. And so for about 3 months, that was my MO. And I started to feel better and better and better. And when I had cravings, because I'd still get cravings, in my imagination, I'd see that stack of pancakes with butter and syrup, or that's waffles with syrup on. And I would just eat fat. I would go and pull out my refrigerated dish of rendered fat, because I would cook fatty ground beef, like from US
Mm-hmm.
Wellness. I could order the 55-45, and then you get a lot of rendered fat. And you can order beef tallow online too, grass-fed beef tallow, and you could add that to your burger meat. So I would always keep some rendered fat. And if I had a craving that was overwhelming, I would just eat some of that. I'd liquefy it and drink some of that rendered fat. And that the cravings go away. It's just my body saying I need some fat. And so the first year I ate quite a bit of fat to help heal my body. So at 6 months, by then I had added back in some bacon, but not much else. And I did at 6 months, I added back in coffee and seemed okay with it. And then I also added in the intermittent fasting at the same time, and even occasionally did a 2-day or even up to a 3-day fast for the autophagy. And I'll tell you, at 6 months, I looked at, well, first of all, at 3 months, I looked at Scott and I said, let's go another 3 months. He says, okay. At 6 months, I said, I'm going to go a year. I really want to see what my body can do in a year. So with the fasting, that seemed to also kick things in. I started oxalate dumping. I couldn't figure out what it was at first, so I went on a Facebook group, and people said you're dumping oxalates, because I didn't know anything about that. I'd never heard of it. So the things we can learn from each other. And then I eventually found Sally Norton and others who talk about it. So at 8 months, though, I told you how my right shoulder had been still so painful that I really couldn't move it very well, and we were concerned about it, and I still had the aches and pains. I went to bed one night. I was visiting my daughter and their new baby in Chicago, she and her husband, and I went to bed and woke up the next morning, went, where's the joint pain? No joint pain. I mean, this may sound far-fetched, but literally overnight, I could start moving my shoulder again, you know, free movement, no pain. I was like, what miracle just happened here? Brett, it's a miracle when these things happen. It's amazing. So
Absolutely.
I was totally sold. At that point, I was like, why in the world would I ever go back? And here I am now, over 6 years later, still doing carnivore. I've experimented back and forth with, once in a while by visiting one of my kids. Maybe I'll have a little bit of fruit, or maybe I'll, if it's somebody's birthday, I'll have one little bite of their birthday cake, but it's very rare. I've gone in and out of having coffee or not. Coffee doesn't affect me too much because I don't drink a lot of it, and I only drink half calf usually. I'm mindful of dairy. This past winter, I added in more dairy, some of the full fat yogurt and things, and it was too much for my body. My gut didn't really like it too much. And I went through a short period around the holidays where I had some keto ice cream, the Rebel ice cream and others. And
Yeah.
oh no, my gut did not like that stuff. You want to start tooting a lot.
Especially if you have more, like if you finish off one of those whole little containers, that's too much of it. The GI the next morning's not good.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah. So plus it's addictive. It's just like standard American diet, the processed foods. Those keto products are addictive. as well. And ice cream for me can particularly be a trigger of addiction. So I have made carnivore ice cream before, and Dr. Kiltz, I know, is a real promoter of his carnivore. He calls it Kiltz ice cream or something, and maybe Ken Berry and others. But I have to be careful to not make it very often. Just actually when I go visit my son in Florida, and I'll make it as a treat when I'm there. But I stay away from most dairy. I have it just occasionally, maybe a little cheese in an omelet once in a while or something like that. So right now I'm mostly beef and water with a little bit of coffee. Again, I do occasionally buy in the carnivore market. There's two different companies that make these like crispy chip like things out of meat. There's Carnivore Snacks, and I don't get any, I'm not affiliated with them. So I'm not marketing for them. I'm just saying once in a while, Carnivore Snacks, I'll order their ribeye chips, or Carnivore Crisps. I like their chicken skin crisp because they're really fatty. They're like a yummy, buttery, fatty flavor, but they're pricey. And I don't want, again, get reliant on those things. I really just enjoy making burgers. Either I make the as a burger patty with I do include eggs probably about 3 times a week. So sometimes burgers with some fried egg on it. You know, I love the yolk. It's so good for you. There's so many nutrients in the yolk.
Multivitamin.
Yep. Yep. Or I get some fatty ground beef, you know, like the 73 fat, lean fat content, and I steam that, and that's really yummy. And I have ribeye steak, and so and that's sort of my go-to. And sometimes I get so involved in seeing clients, um, doing my business stuff that I I just don't eat, and all of a sudden I look at the clock and it's 3 p.m. in the afternoon and I haven't eaten yet, right? So that's the beauty of carnivore or keto if you're more ketovore. Is you're not so tied to food. You don't have to eat every 2 hours. You're not constantly thinking about when is my next meal? What am I going to make for my next meal? How many ingredients? You don't go to the store and spend an hour at the store shopping for it. You can go right to the meat counter, get your meat, and out. I mean, I can't think of anything simpler, easier, and healthier than eating ruminant meat. And, oh, for my birthday, I just had a birthday. Just turned, I don't know, we say our age at this point, but I'm in my 60s. And we had lamb. My partner cooked up these little lamb chops. They're not big, and you get like 6 in a package. Oh my gosh, that was a treat. It was yummy. So when you eat this way, you're so satisfied. You don't crave other things. You don't think about food all day long. You can really stay centered and focused on what your activities are. I love, now that I'm in Arizona, I get lots of sunshine. So I don't sunburn when I'm out in the sun unless I'm in Florida and I go to the ocean. Then I can, because you're by the water. I have to be a little more careful there. But here in Arizona, I can go out for an hour bike ride or a walk. No sunscreen, no sunburn. That's the other thing I wanted to mention. I, for all my life, had an allergy to the sun that would um, it would just show itself for about a month at the beginning of the summer. So here in Arizona, that would mean like March and April when we start getting more sun and heat. In Iowa, it was more like end of May and beginning of June. This year, I didn't get it. First time in my life, I've never had that. It's a rash you'd get. It's not a sunburn. It's like a prickly rash you'd get on your arms or your legs or your chest. First time in my life this year, I never got it. So it took 6 years of carnivore for that to disappear. And that's what I want to emphasize here, Brett. You got to be patient. Some symptoms will go away immediately. And you go, wow, this is a miracle. And some things like that take a little longer to go away. And the emotional part too, I want to address that when it seems appropriate, but lots of things that really improved my leaky gut obviously healed itself. I no longer had low thyroid because, I've always had those things tested. Libido is just great. It's just fine. The joint pain, no more migraines, no more UTIs. I just, the only thing I still get now is about 3 years ago, I was one of those that reacted to something in the COVID vaccine. And whether it's a spike protein or something else, my naturopath, I switched naturopaths. I found a naturopath that actually ate carnivore because she was a bodybuilder and competed in bikini contests, and she ate carnivore, and so she understood my labs, and um, she felt I also had mold still living in my body from mold exposure, and that I might the spike protein or whatever other toxin. It happened immediately. I flared up with some what they call rheumatoid arthritis after I had the vaccine, and the UTIs came back. But that's not from eating carnivore. That this was another toxin that came into my body that my body didn't like. So it's not food related. And that's the other thing about this is there are other people out there in the carnivore space like Judy Cho and a few others. She has Nutrition Judy site. They talk about this and help people that have other issues that aren't related to the food you're eating. That being said, it's the carnivore diet that keeps me from having to go on medications. This hasn't flared up in a very long time, especially when I stopped doing dairy. No more problem. As long as I eat pretty close to lion diet, I don't get the flare-ups. I'm pretty lucky that way. So I would say meat is my medicine. If I weren't eating a carnivore diet, if I were eating a standard diet, I would have to be on methotrexate or some other medication. I'd probably be on a thyroid. They tell us the average 60-year-old woman is on 5 different medications. I'd probably be one of those people if I weren't eating a meat-based diet. I mean, I may sound preachy here, but my goodness, my experience has told me it works. And I've seen it with my partner and with my son as well. I did switch naturopaths.
Share a little bit about your son.
Okay, let me do that. I'd like to. He's now just turned 26. But when he was 20, he was still living in Iowa with his dad, and I had moved down here. And he was overweight, obese. He loved his pizza, his donuts, the usual stuff. And he went to get his hair cut, and the cosmetologist said she recognized the symptoms on the back of his neck. He had the spotting, which is a sign that you're pre-diabetic or maybe diabetic. So she said, you might want to go check with your doctor. So he did. He got an appointment, and the doctor confirmed, yes, you are pre-diabetic at age 20. And that's the issue we're seeing now. Kids, it's so prevalent. The kids are that wasn't a thing 35, 40 years ago to have kids, or even 20 years ago. And that scared him.
It was for old people. Type 2 diabetes was a 60, 70-year-old thing when we were growing up.
Absolutely.
It wasn't a childhood. It was adult onset and childhood diabetes.
That's what it was called, sugar diabetes or adult onset diabetes. You're absolutely right. I remember my great aunt having that.
We have kids in grade school presenting now.
Yeah. Well, it scared him at age 20. And he liked following Jordan Peterson. That was one of his go-to, at that time, YouTube or podcasts he'd listen to, and he'd read the books. So he called me up and he says, Mom, Jordan Peterson's doing this all meat diet like that you and Scott are. And I want to give this a try. I'm pre-diabetic and I know I need to do something about it. So he came down, he took a little time off work and flew down and spent a couple of weeks with us. And he loves meat anyway. So it was really an easy transition, except he needed to take digestive enzymes along with it for a couple months because he'd been um, lactose intolerant. And, he'd had all these different problems surfacing that now we put it together, it was all due to diet, right? So for the first few months, he took those digestive enzymes, and some people need to do that, right? Um, but he had real success. In less than a year, he lost over 100 pounds. It just like fell off of him. He loved the diet. He liked his pork chops, his steaks. I would send him some steaks from US Wellness sometimes, and or some burger. And he did fine. He didn't have any support when he went back to Iowa. His dad was not supportive of it, but he had our support. And I checked in with him, and we started fasting together. We would challenge each other to go, let's do a 2-day fast together. And so long distance, we do these things. But one of the more significant things, Brett, that I found with his journey is he had severe depression, really noticeable as he went from middle school into high school, and really suffered with it in high school and beyond. And at the 3-month mark, he had a significant change. The depression just lifted away, just like went away. And I remember him calling me and saying, Mom, I don't have depression anymore. And he'd been clinically diagnosed with it. He had tried medications and didn't like them. Many people, like my partner too, had years ago tried medications. They just don't do well with them, right? And he'd been seeing a therapist to help him with his depression, and he didn't need that anymore. He says, Mom, it's gone. I feel great. He just like miracle. And he now, 26, he eats more ketovore. He's a little more lenient with it, but he's doing really well. He had gained back a little bit of the weight because he spends a lot of time on the computer, a little sedentary. So he started walking his dog and lifting weights, and he has dropped 37 pounds in 2 months, just getting a little stricter in his diet and getting more exercise. And he just feels great. I can hear it when I
And
talk.
but walking's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Walking's incredible, but the resistance training too just does everything for the body.
It does. At any age, I have some bands and light weights here at home. So if I can't get to the gym, I can do things here. But I have a local gym I go to twice a week. And otherwise, I go out for my daily walks too. I don't run as much anymore. If I want to do the sprint or HIIT training, I do that more on the elliptical, because that's supposed to get your visceral fat if you do some of that sprinting. Yeah, I've heard that. So I tried
Sean O'Mara.
Yeah, Sean O'Mara. That's the guy. I remember listening to him a year ago, summer, going, I gotta add some sprints in here. It's good for you. So, just watching his journey. And I have 3 other kids, his siblings, who all rolled their eyes going, oh, Mom's on another fad diet here. And yet here we are, both their youngest brother and me and my partner, thriving on this. You'd think they would, figure it out and decide to try it for themselves, but they don't. Well, my other son, his wife's vegetarian, so he eats a more plant-based diet with a lot of fish, but he won't eat red meat.
Thank God.
Yeah. But and my daughter and son-in-law with their 2 kids, they're just in the throes of raising a family, and they eat a standard American diet. And even though I offer to help them, they're just not ready yet to do it. And when they are ready, I'll step up, and my son Noah, who lives near them, will step up and help them. And we're always here to help. You can lead that horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And there's so many people I'd love to help, but they just aren't ready for it. They just don't have
their time yet.
You got to have that big enough why. You got to know why. And for some of us, we don't want to be that person in the wheelchair or with the walker or with all the aches and pains and all the medications managing our symptoms. I heard that this morning. I did a reading for a lady, and it came up that, when I'm a psychic medium. That's my profession. I'm a massage therapist, psychic medium, Reiki healer, shamanic healer. And that's what I do. That's my business. And I love serving people. And the lady today came up that she was diabetic and had had a toe amputated. And she says, it's okay. I'm managing it just fine. It's well managed. And like, okay, she's not ready to hear this information. And I don't bring it up in a reading unless the door opens, unless the client asks, what can I do? And then I wait till we're done with the reading. I say, well, I have some suggestions, but let's finish your reading first. I have to be very ethical and give the client what they're really needing, what the spirit world knows they need. And then at the end, if they've opened the door, when we're done with the session, I'll bring it up. And there have been a few clients that have had some success switching to either keto. There's one in Iowa that's gone in and out of carnivore a few times. And he always tells me, well, I was on it, did well. I went off it, didn't do well. Now I'm back on it, doing better. They go in and out of it. So for some people, carnivore isn't a forever. It is for me. I bet it is for you, Brett. And I bet a lot of the people listening here, I bet it is for all of you. But all we can do is hold the space without judgment for our loved ones, for our family, for our friends, and hope that by example, they will figure it out, right?
One thing I will interject in there, just because it's a good point to do that in here, and especially when you say, I bet it is for you, Brett. Yes, end of 2018, 2019, I did my journey. You're aware I lost my 115 pounds in 9 months. Wound up reversing heart disease and other different situations going on. But I had done all of that being, well, and here's where the definitions get so difficult for so many people, because there is internet and grocery store keto, and that can mean 1,000 different things with a bunch of different processed junk food that is just called keto and has nothing to do. What you and I are talking about really from a keto is, and correct me if I'm putting improper words in your mouth, but the way I came to this and was taught by it, and I found who I believe are holy grails. And if you've seen my hero page on my website, people like Dr. Sarah, who taught me what's going on, and that's her book right there. It's having a great source of animal-based protein, whether that's meat, fish, or eggs, and then if you want to have some broccoli, some asparagus, some Brussels sprouts or whatever with it, go ahead. And I would have a small handful of berries, but and I had tremendous success. I lost 115 pounds. I slowly, through the last 6 years now, have moved more to what I early on called, I didn't really call myself a keto person, because keto's a loaded term and a lot of people just don't know what to do with it. And it's become a bastardized term that it doesn't really mean what I think it should mean. And I'm guaranteed that 80% of people who get introduced to the concept, because they think that keto is about food, and keto's not about food. Ketos is nutritional ketosis. It's a physiologic state, which is how your body utilizes the fat that you eat and the stored body fat that you have, and creates ketones, and which is so great for all the mental health aspects, and like your son's depression.
Yes. Like the depression,
with all of this, but and so I considered myself for much of the last number of years, and I know I didn't come up with this term, I'm sure I heard it, nutrivore. So I just always focused on, I eat the most nutriently dense, bioavailable food, and if I wanted to have a little bit of vegetable with, and I make, as you would remember, being Iowa, being Wisconsin, we get real winters here. And so I buy bone broth, and I'll make a thing, or I buy bones, cow bones, and then I'll take a 12-quart thing, and I make 12 quarts of bone broth, and then I subdivide it into 6 different units, and then I
Oh, this
add
is
more
really
filtered water to
yeah, yeah.
and then and enough salt and everything, real salt, not like Morton salt. But then then I have 3 meats. Usually I'll have like a stew meat chopped up in there. I might have some steak or hamburger, and sometimes some pork sausage all in there. But then I throw carrots and onions and mushrooms and maybe some broccoli or asparagus. And so I'll have a bowl because it's in the fridge now. I've got a 12-quart thing when I do this over the winters of soup just sitting there. And I would normally have a burger or a couple burgers or 2 brats or 6 eggs, whether it's omelet, scrambled, or doing whatever, because you can do so many things with eggs. But I'd always
Oh,
have a bowl of that soup, which would bring a little bit of veg in. Um,
mhm.
so probably what you would call an 85 to 90%
Yep.
nutrivore, carnivore, and depending upon who you listen to, even some of the stricter people or I'd say best scientific understanding of this physiologic state. And they're like, hey, if you're like 85, 90% carnivore, you're there. You're not
There.
doing enough other stuff. And if you're smart with where the carbs are coming from, they're not
Right.
coming from Twinkies or Ho-Hos, they're coming from Brussels sprout and some raspberries, sauerkraut, because I know that that's a fermented foods. And I've gone
Right.
down the
Ferment.
rabbit hole of
Yeah.
many of these foods we couldn't eat in their native state, just like
Yeah.
beans, not
Ferment
green
them.
beans, but
Isn't it
you
Dr.
have to
Schindler
ferment.
talks about this? Isn't he the anthropologist
Yes,
about the fermented foods? Yeah. Yeah.
yes. And then also just the last 2 years, really, out of my, you can call it 12,000 hours of deep diving all of this. The last 2 years have been heavily invested in the quantum health aspect and the circadian health aspect. And that
Mhm.
brings in understanding the seasonal aspect and
Yep.
what's grown at your time of year, at your latitude, as opposed to
Absolutely.
flying kiwis all around the world 365 and walking into 7-Eleven and buying a kiwi. So,
Bingo.
so that
Let,
that's where I've cleaned up a lot of stuff lately. And I'll just make one last thing, and I want to come back to you, is that with with what I've been doing and going on Dave Mack's No Carb Life in July, and now been back 2 more times for 3 episodes,
yay.
and I had him on mine just 2 weeks ago, and on my podcast, and so many people, because yeah, for all practical purposes, both Dr. Ryan Cooley, who I share my other podcast with, and this, we're both kind of consider ourselves for the most part carnivores, but we're not like lion, where it's just red meat, salt,
Right.
and water. You know,
Yeah.
you could say it's almost like the parsley on the steak is the amount of veg
Yeah.
that it's decoration more than anything else. But
Absolutely.
also I sauerkraut because that was part of my protocol for reversing the heart disease, that the fermented food helps with the whole gut
How,
microbiome.
how
Anyhow,
amazing
so
is
but
that?
with then being on Dave's
Yeah.
one more
I'm
time.
sorry. I said that's amazing that the fermented foods helped your heart disease. That is that's amazing. Most
And
people don't
yeah,
know that. Yeah. That's really
so,
amazing.
well, I'm assuming it did because it was always in my stuff. It was
Yeah.
more coconut-based kefir at the front end of it, and then
Uh-huh.
that company stopped making it, so that went out. And it was, but the person who Patrick Toit, whose protocol I found on Ivor Cummins' Fat Emperor podcast, right when I found out I had my heart disease, it was
Yeah.
like God sent it, Source sent it to me to say, Brett, you're ready right now for this right here. And quick sidebar, really hilarious story. I'm watching Patrick
Huh.
be interviewed by Ivor about how he took 1,000 calcium score, reversed it down to 0. And he
Mhm.
was the one who said, well, I was eating a lot of sauerkraut because it's high in the MK4, K2, and MK7 vitamins. And so I was craving it. And then he got deep into K vitamins with his protocol and career, and has a K vitamin line that he sells. But what happens is I'm watching Ivor interview this guy, and I go, I know him from somewhere.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, in his story, he was like he's got 2 PhDs, and he's in charge of at a company called Wausau Papers, and so we've got a number of paper mill companies in
Huh.
Wisconsin. And when I
Yeah.
started my corporate wellness job, I sold Wausau Papers their corporate wellness program. And 4 or 5 years
Oh
earlier, he wound up figuring out his heart disease issue and everything and started down this path. And Wausau Papers allowed him 2 hours a day to work, and the rest of the time go fix your heart disease, Patrick. And he went through
amazing.
16,000 hours every pretty much paper that is on PubMed that has to do with heart disease. And he reverse engineered all of this. But I'm like, that's the guy who was on the committee that I sold the corporate wellness program to.
What a
And here I am
synchronicity.
learning how to reverse my heart disease. And
Wow.
he's talking to a guy, Ivor Cummins in Ireland. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
all of these different things. But anyhow, so and again,
So you,
my if you want to call it a shtick, is it's about eating the right stuff. It's about living as much time, not 24/7, 365, but staying fat adapted and living for the most part in nutritional ketosis. You can do that from even vegan to vegetarian, and Verta Health does this and proved this all out. So it's in the literature from all of that, and that's how I learned it. You can do it in my kind of world of where I first started, the 20 total carb or less, 20
yeah,
to zero carb. And
sure.
carnivore is just the zero-ish, closer to the zero-ish carb, nutritional ketosis. And then it comes down to personal differences from one, how much sugar addiction does the person have and not realize they have, because they look at a piece of bread, they don't realize it metabolizes to sugar. They look at the broccoli and they say they don't realize it metabolizes to sugar. And so on the glycemic index and where their gut health is. And so everything's
Right.
based on, with me, where is your metabolic health now? What are your goals? I'll help you craft things to allow you to understand what to eat and what to monitor and what to get there. And there's the down here, the keto mojo,
Yeah,
that we can know what's going on with their ketones and their glucose, or they
absolutely.
could wear a CGM or do whatever. But
Sure.
but anyhow, so, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I kind of took over here and I didn't want to do that. But
Oh,
but yeah, so
well,
you've had this tremendous experience. Go ahead.
your experience is very important to share, Brett, because your experience is a little bit different than mine and different than my son's. But my son, like you, enjoys, when I say he's a little more ketovore, he doesn't do the processed foods. He like you, he'll do some broccoli with his pork chops, or some asparagus with a little cheese on it with his ribeye steak or whatever. So same thing. He doesn't do the junk food either, and that's pretty amazing for somebody in their 20s. You're seeing more and more of it.
We're at that age. That is incredible.
Yeah, and with nobody there eating that
Absolutely.
way, right? Um, so I'm just pretty
Well, and
proud of.
the last 15 seconds just to finish up the story is that when I went on Dave, and here I am now talking to, at the time, 67,000. He's now at 80,000 subscribers in the last
I
two and a
know
half
he's done
months.
so well. Dave is
So I was,
amazing. Yeah,
he's incredible. But,
yeah,
all of the, but suddenly now I wind up picking 15 customers up, clients that want coaching, and they're all very preoccupied with carnivore. And I'm like, yeah. But what I was telling you earlier, I think before we were recording, how I was all upset that I got a little emotional on that episode. But then also I wound up saying to myself, I'm never going to get a client from here. What would somebody that understands carnivore need me for? What am I going to say? Go lower carb than zero? I mean, but what it really comes down to, and here's the moral out of my misconception of that. I did Dave's podcast because I'm getting into podcasting. I wanted to have some experience with it and everything, not really thinking I would mine any clients out of it. But what happened is that, where I just said, where somebody's at on their sugar addiction spectrum. And even when people are trying to do things, there are times where they need help in finding their why. They need help in
absolutely. Yep.
finding strategies, because they're living in households with other people that aren't part of this. And so when all of the junk is sitting there, confront in the face all day long. They can have other scenarios and social situations that they have to learn how to navigate. And they just really sometimes somebody just needs a coach more as a moral support person that they can kind of lean on. And then I've
Yep.
created a group of people WhatsApp that I share all of my meals. I do 8 to 10 to 20 memes a day that I group
Oh,
dump on
fun.
them every day. They start creating friendships and support
That's
mechanisms among themselves beyond our hourly coaching type things that they purchase from me. But the funny thing is that so instead of being, because I told Dave right on that first episode, I go, well, Dave, I've never been like lion diet. I've never gone red meat, salt, and water.
yeah.
I've I started keto. I've done this Nutrivore thing, and yeah, most people would call me a carnivore, but I wouldn't pass a purity test. Not that anybody ever has to, but
But too, that's the flexibility of eating and being in our community. And community, Brett, you really keyed in on that. Is so important that you have your version that works for you. And I have a
well,
version that we
hold that
experiment.
thought for a quick second.
Yeah.
Hold that thought for a quick second, because then August 1st, I decided I am going to go pure. And a little creep that I allowed to happen this last year from some stupid stuff, I
Yeah.
dropped it like that. A couple little aches and pains and other little things, even
Yeah.
coffee. So I just became meat, fish, and eggs, salt, and that was it for 90 days. So I've now done a 90-day, what you could call purity aspect of
Wow.
carnivore.
And
And
you see the difference?
and
Did you?
and I'm like, I didn't miss the coffee at all, which surprised me. But I knew from genetic testing I'm a hyper um, caffeine not responder, but metabolizer. That I could drink coffee all day right up to going to bed. Where some people they drink after 10 in the morning, they won't sleep that night. So we all have our individual genetic and epigenetic
Nuance.
differences.
Yeah.
But
It's
like you said, and I think, or no, it wasn't even you. It was my morning interview where the ketones change how epigenetically our genes respond to things.
absolutely they do.
And
That's
yeah, I
key.
got heavy duty in 2021, and it's amazing with all that. So yeah, so now I can kind of sit here and say, well, hey, Carol, because I've even not had coffee since August 1st. And one of my clients actually turned me on. And the thing that I'm now addicted to, because guess what? And it's not a real addiction, but she put a 2 pound chuck roast in an air fryer and then cut it up
Ooh.
and 15 minutes at 400 degrees, flip it over another 15 minutes. It was like beautifully rare how I like it in the picture she shared with the group. I'm in my car driving by Costco. I pull into the parking lot. I buy two, because in my whole 6 years, I had not had chuck roast. Almost every other, from a tomahawk to a ribeye to pork chop, everything else in the world, but I'd never done it with a roast. And so I bought 2 3 pound slabs at Costco, and I did the 2 pound, like how she said. And every day since that, I've had at least a pound, if not two different 1 pound chuck roasts in the air fryer, because I just love how it's brain dead easy that you can just throw one piece of meat from the fridge into the air fryer, push the buttons, walk away for 12 minutes, because I'm
Oh,
doing 1 pound pieces. So walk
yeah.
away for 12 minutes and then flip it for 6 more minutes, walk away again. It dings. I go back and my meal's ready. And
Oh,
there's just other time doing anything. And they're so juicy, just like any slow cook roast, how it carves more like a steak, but it's so juicy and so flavorful with just salt. To me, it's like nirvana.
it
So
makes it just talking about it. Yeah. Yeah. You know,
my group laughs at me.
Mhm. I've not yet invested in an air fryer, but when my kids ask me, well, what do you want for your birthday or upcoming for Christmas? And I don't like them to spend much money on me, but I said, one thing you could add to the list is an air fryer. I do want to start experimenting with cooking meat in the air fryer and so on, because I've seen a lot of carnivores enjoy theirs. So I'm going to have to reach out to you when I get one and hopefully get one
I
soon.
don't know if mine is the one I would recommend, but it's working great for me. I do have another question, which kind of ties all of your different worlds together
Okay,
with all of
sure,
this.
have at it. Yeah.
And so you and I are now both well aware of all of the mental health aspects and kind of the elimination of what ketosis can do for
Yes.
eliminating brain fog.
Yeah.
Now, you, with what you do as a medium, with your energy healing, with the Reiki,
Mhm.
this is all very heavy duty mental aspect things and what I'll call being in tune
Yeah.
and everything. Did you notice any of these things go to different levels or from
Oh,
all of this?
I am so glad you asked this question, um, because as a
I don't remember
medium,
you talking about it with Dave, so I'm
no,
just
I didn't touch on this part with Dave, and so I don't expect all of you to believe my what I believe, but I tune in to the angelic realm. I have since I was a kid. I definitely believe in whether you call it God or Great Spirit or that source energy. But there is a higher power that permeates everything and connects us in oneness and unity together, even as we are our unique individuals. So in mediumship is where I link to somebody in the spirit world or a group of people that like your mom and dad, or um, people that might have a son or a daughter, or their spouse is now, their partner is now in the spirit world, and for them it can be very healing to be able to hear from them. They might think of them and hear from them and think that they're unsure. Am I making this up? Am I so on? And I'm what's called an evidential medium. So when I bring through mom from the spirit world, mom's got to tell me who she is and give me all kinds of evidence that I wouldn't know, but you would be able to go, that's mom. Whether it's personality, memories, what lipstick she wore, what perfume she wore, whatever it is, it can be the funniest things sometimes that you wouldn't think of. You have a memory of, the car getting stuck in the snow and you had to push her out or something like that. Yeah, just funny things and interesting things. But what I found changed for me when I healed my gut. And that's why my journey with nutrition is a little bit different than yours. I really needed to heal my gut. And in mediumship, we use what we call our clairs. And as a psychic, too, you have to be psychic to become a medium. And you use what's called the clairs. Your clairvoyance would be your inner vision using your third eye. And that's quite strong, has always been strong in me. Your clairaudience, that inner hearing, your clairsentience, your inner feeling. How are you sensing and feeling? Your claircognizance, just the knowing. You don't know where the information came in, you just know it. And so on. There's other things like how you might taste things or smell things energetically. But the part that was sort of missing in my readings was that the gut feelings, the feeling. I'd see it. I'd be able to describe. I see a sailboat and so's taking you sailing, or I see this dog with floppy ears that looks like a golden retriever. I describe it. But I couldn't feel into it. Like, what's the meaning here? What's the relationship here? What Because my gut wasn't working right. It was broken. And when I healed my gut, wham, all of a sudden I not only see the picture, I could feel it. I could really bring in much more depth into the readings. Not that my readings before weren't still accurate and good and people got what they needed, but now they're just fuller. There's more dimension to the readings. I see the picture and I feel the feeling around it. And that's key. That's a big difference that I've seen. The other is I've gained a lot more confidence. My confidence, not ego. I'm not saying ego, look how good I am, because we know we don't resonate with every person we read for. We're not always the right psychic or medium for each person. But I just have a lot more confidence. I know when I sit down, whether it's with an individual or with a group, I do groups as well, mostly on Zoom. But if I get an opportunity to go speak somewhere and do an inspirational talk and give a demonstration of mediumship where maybe somebody, some people in the crowd get a 6-minute reading or a 7 or 8-minute reading where somebody comes through. That's a demonstration of mediumship. What it does is it proves that life continues. So consciousness continues.
Right.
Our soul is infinite. So I have much more confidence when I go in. I'm not scared. I know spirit's going to show up. I don't know who or how, although I get hints and I'm guided ahead of time. Sometimes what to wear will have meaning, or the color of my water bottle will have meaning, or, we were talking about pendulums earlier, and crystals, jewelry. Something I noticed before the reading will come into play. Spirit uses all of that. And that is so much more vibrant for me now. So healing my gut, healing my brain fog being gone, plus the energy to do this service. And that's how I see it. I work for spirit, and I'm working for spirit embodied, such as you, Brett, such as me, such as all of you. I can do this all day long. When I moved here, I couldn't do any of it. I wasn't well enough. Now I can hold the space all day long. I can give a half-hour reading or a 2-hour reading. I can share with a client if they need a soul retrieval or illumination or extraction work. I can spend whatever time is needed for them. And I really attribute that to, being in fairly good metabolic health now. Like I said, I had that little setback 3 years ago, but that hasn't slowed me down. I'm not on medications that are going to clog me up with more toxins. Most days I feel really good in my body, and I listen more to my body. I can hear my body better. And that's something a lot of you might be experiencing now, is whatever version of proper human diet, as Ken Berry would say, ketovore, carnivore, whatever version you're doing, if that's helping you feel better and you can hear your body, sense your body, what's it telling you? Eat, don't eat, fast today. Cook up some eggs and put that roast in the air fryer. Go out for a walk, go a little longer. Call that friend that needs to hear from you. And join a community, whether it's Brett's community, whether it's all these wonderful YouTubers we have now. Look at all these doctors we have, Dr. Berry, Dr. Chafee, Tony Hampton, Dr. Kilt, you name it, Dr. Ovadia. Did you ever check in with Dr. Ovadia with your heart health? I bet he was somebody interesting for you. All these people.
We're going to do an episode, and Mike.
Yeah. Good
no,
for you.
I was just to say, we're going to do an episode. He's committed to it. But my co-host in my other one, the cardiologist, Dr. Ryan Cooley's already been on, recorded with him a month ago. It just hasn't come out yet. He's got so many, they're all stacked up. But yeah, we'll get around to doing that. And Kilts too.
And who else? I wrote down a bunch of them so I'd remember. Oh, I love the fact that Chris Palmer and Georgia Eady are doing this work in the metabolic brain health, that so many of the disorders, as they're called, whether it's schizophrenia, bipolar, or you go into forms of dementia, Alzheimer's, and even autism, how it's metabolic, it's dysfunction of our mitochondria. And our mitochondria convert our food to light, to energy. And when I work with that light, with that energy, and if our mitochondria isn't being fed the right nutrition, it struggles. It's like, you can tune up your car and change whatever you need to tune up your car, but if you're not giving it the fuel it needs, like you try and give it sugar water instead of gasoline, it's not going to run. Well, the same thing with our mitochondria. Our mitochondria need the ketones. and needed to convert that to the light that our body needs, and that light energy. It changes it to ATP, and that P is the phosphorus, and that's light. Phosphorus is light. When you have the sparklers the kids run around with at 4th of July, that's made of phosphorus. That's the sparkling light. And that's basically when I'm working energetically, I often see light and colors, or if I'm looking into somebody's chakras, I can see the density or the lightness. And I'm a real advocate of layering energy work, mindfulness, meaning do you do prayer, meditation? Do you take time out for quiet to be in stillness? Breath work is very important. Breath work can really help. There's a lot of good stuff out there on YouTube about breath work. Of course, exercise, but
do you do a
also
lot with sunrises, and do you do a lot with sunrises and sunsets?
absolutely. I love, actually, I learned this many years ago. Some people call it as the sun is rising. That is that pure Christ or Buddha consciousness that you're and you can gaze right as it's starting to break the horizon. You can safely gaze at it, or as it's starting to set, the light changes. And in the Peruvian shamanic culture, we are children of the light. We're not children of the sun. We're children of the light. And however you perceive that, whatever religion you adhere to, we are all beings of light. And by giving our body that opportunity to run efficiently, think of all the good we can vibrate out, and I'm a proponent of getting that body work done, and massage, or if you like acupuncture or other things, or craniosacral, which I do, is really helpful. I find it helps a lady, the client that comes for Parkinson's, it helps her Parkinson's symptoms. I haven't yet convinced her to go keto. She just is a little hesitant, but maybe someday she'll give it a try. We'll see.
Parkinson's, I've got some information you can share with her,
That
because
would
I've
be
got
great.
a neurologic part of my book that I'm doing for metabolic therapy, which includes Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and all the different ways that this and red light and fast walking, or if they can't walk that well because of advanced Parkinson's, even just riding on a bike, but creating that IBNF in the brain is huge for the Parkinson's. And my mom, I didn't tell you, but in the last few years, before she passed, she wound up having to go into assisted and full skilled nursing because she was in a wheelchair, because Parkinson's had developed. We thought it was all the psychotic bipolar medications for her whole life, is what her neurologist thought it was, and it might have been a heavy duty aspect of it. But so that also piqued the curiosity for myself with Parkinson's on what's going on. So I'm happy to share that in any of my stuff if you want. I just
that would be great.
But
that would be awesome to share that with her. I find I have to tread a little lightly in what I do with clients. Most clients aren't coming to me to find out about keto or carnivore. They don't realize they're coming to me for some other reason, but yet often nutrition ties into that other reason. So again, I either have to find that pathway in, they have to open the door somehow, or the spirit world has to open the door for me. And then at the end of a session, I can, when we're done, I can introduce it to them or share my story, or a lot of my clients come in with mental health, depression, anxiety, grief. And so sharing my son's story has been transformational for some people. And my partner's story too. He finds eating carnivore, he's much more flexible carnivore. He'll add his hot sauce and things like that. And he did try going back to lean protein, higher carb for about 5 months. Find it didn't help he did it for bodybuilding. Found he just got bloated from eating all those carbs, and he didn't feel as well. So he switched back to his flexible carnivore and doing much better with it. But so everybody has their different journey. And I highly suggest you join communities. So whether reach out to Brett for help. You join a carnivore Facebook
Or
community.
wherever you're connected, wherever you feel you're
Yeah,
connected, go do somebody.
right. Go. Yeah, exactly.
Much of
Have,
what I put on my website,
yeah.
I try to provide enough information, and the website's still just like the channel, just 2-3 months old, and so it's going to evolve and blossom quite a bit over the next 6 months. But my philosophy is give them the information, and if they're not on medications or have very serious chronic conditions that need to be titrated and managed, they should be able to do this on their own, because I did it on my own. But I
Some
just had to
people
first
need,
break my brain from all the dogma that I was attached to from my previous, mainstream medicine world
yeah.
professions.
I
And
find,
then once I could see the
yeah.
light,
Uh-huh. I find some people
go
need
ahead.
more hand holding. You and I tend to be more, we decide to do it and we do it, right? And we just do. Like I was early into this, what we call carnivore, before I knew of Sean Baker or Ken Berry or anybody else. The only one I knew of was Kevin Stock. So luckily I had support of my partner and then my son. But a lot of people need more hand holding. They just need more encouragement, more, come on, you can do this, more cheerleading, more, um, you know, pat on the back. You're doing great. It's okay if you had a day off. Let's, get right back on it. What saddens me, and if anything, it actually angers me, is misinformation. A friend of mine I hadn't talked to in a long time from Iowa called me up on Sunday to wish me happy birthday. And she was telling me about her success. She's been obese all her life and needs knee surgery, and the doctor needed her to lose weight. We hear this from Sean Baker and the other orthopedic surgeons like Dr. Rick in Des Moines and talking about this very thing. So she went on Ozempic and she's lost 80 pounds, but then she got kind of sick with it and had to stop it. And she's gained back 8 pounds. And so I've talked with her many times that I'm here. I would help her give carnivore or some version of it a try. Cause I remember going out to lunch with her at Longhorn and she'd eat her steak. I said, you like your steak. You know what she told me? They have a new doctor. And this doctor told her that she can't eat red meat or pork because she has IBS. I just went through the roof. I said, oh my gosh, do you know how many people heal their IBS by going to red meat? I'm like, what misinformation, the harm this doctor, and I told her that is criminal. You need to change doctors. I just got real blunt with her. And I said, and I gave her all the names of all these carnivore influencers and keto influencers. I said, I'm here to help, not judge. You do it the way you need to do it. But your doctor is wrong and misinformed. And it's time for you to inform yourself and then make a decision. But I said, red meat will heal your gut, not harm it. And she was like, really? That's God, like you said, you need to break those doctors' brains. You got to get on it, Brett. Keep at it. Get to those doctors. Another friend of mine, again from Iowa, because I still have a lot of friends back there. I did a session for her recently, and she told me she was doing keto. And I have talked with her about keto and carnivore because she thought I was going to die eating carnivore. When I started it 6 years ago, she thought I was going crazy. But I said, oh, you're doing keto. Well, I don't know how keto it really is. She's taking those keto supplements that they sell, the pills, and maybe it works. I don't know. I don't know what's in them. But the reason she went keto, she started going to a new chiropractor, and the chiropractor told her she needed to be on keto. So it's that white coat syndrome. You can hear it from your friends. You can hear it from your family. You can have a good friend like you and I who've researched this, who've lived it, who understand the physiology and the biochemistry of our body. I mean, I was a biology and physiology major, and I taught it in massage school. I know this stuff. I'm not an expert like some of the doctors are by any means, but yet I don't have the white coat. I don't have the MD or DO behind my name. So what do I know, right? So it takes sometimes that medical professional telling the person you need to try keto or you need to try carnivore for 90 days. It's just where we're at times. And I don't take it personally, but I kind of sit back and go, it's changing. When I started, nobody that I knew knew. Now the world, it does know of this. And there's a lot of
it is. And have your friend go to my website, my very first blog.
Okay.
And it's about reversing disease and everything. But it was written with the intent purpose of helping doctors break their brains. And so when your doctor's telling you misinformation, red meat problems, and they hear keto because they're only taught diabetic ketoacidosis, one side of the spectrum. They're not taught, nor do they understand appreciate that every baby is born in nutritional ketosis and spent the whole 9 months in the womb, whether the mother was or not, in ketosis. And then if on breast milk, which is 60 to 70% saturated fat, build their big, beautiful brains that work perfectly and wonderfully, unless they get unfortunately poisoned with the formula. But no, I mean, but I go through all of the mental health, the cardiovascular, the diabetes, the neurological, and the mental health aspects of all of these different things. So whatever their thing is, and then here's how your practice can change, you know, and your patients will be just thrilled to come in and see you every time. Doctor, I lost another 20 pounds. You know, we need to take you off this med then because of that. And just everything that it can be and what it's supposed to be. But unfortunately, the people who have the sway with how the medical schools teach everything, it's big farm, it's big egg. That's where all the research dollars come into the universities, and they make sure that I hate to say it because it sounds very tinfoil hat, but it's the honest to God truth now that I've put 12,000 hours in, and I'm a big history buff. And I find the Gary Taubes and the Nina Teicholzes who go and do the 4-year research paper to write books and understand all of this. But when you go to the allopathic healthcare was born, it was born because of Rockefeller and Carnegie. And Rockefeller wanted revenge on breaking up Standard Oil. And he thought we could create every pharmaceutical out of petroleum products till they realized it created cancer. But they took it and changed it from 200 med schools in 1910. By 1913, we were down to 20. And they had to be teaching this kind of a curriculum, nothing to do with natural health or anything that medicine had been 6,000 years a part of. So it's by design, and we finally landed here. And that was a part of my epiphany in 2018. You know, the government, some people believe they're doing right, but the agencies are captured, and that's what it is. And it doesn't matter whether it's Republican or Democrat. What I'll call the machine owns 80% of both sides of the aisle. And that's what it's all about. And it's like-minded. There aren't little cabal meetings where they're making, you know, like Dr. Burns on The Simpsons. We're gonna, you know, do this to, you know, but they don't have to. But there is enough stuff that I won't go into. So one last thing I just wanted to touch on, because this is more just my confession again to you. So when I said that I have you know, my sister, we mentioned, is a Reiki master and has been 20 plus years into all of this, but I didn't really pay attention to it. And then there's a friend of mine who was into Reiki and got me to pay attention to it, and realized another friend of ours is a Reiki person who she went to. And so, but at first, because the last 3 years of this 6-year journey of mine, which started with metabolism and then got so heavy into mitochondria, but also everything that's interrelated with all of this. And I've gotten so into, before we got on, I showed you my books on the quantum physics stuff, the body electric and all of this. and just studying consciousness, because when I opened myself up to understanding why and how Reiki could be happening and working, but then my friend's Reiki master left and went to Hawaii and now lives there. And she's
Oh,
telling me about how they're doing, like you would say, a Zoom,
right.
or on the phone type of a scenario. And at first, when I first heard this 3.5 years ago, I'm going, you don't even have to be in the room, because,
No.
but now that I understand so much more about, through Greg Braden, through Robert Edward Grant, and through understanding consciousness, and how much our government has invested billions of dollars in remote viewing and all of these different
Yeah,
things, and that the
yeah, they
whole
used to
world,
do that. Yeah,
universe, is
yeah,
all connected.
yeah.
And so that's part of why I asked you, because I can really geek out and get technical at the doctor level to a degree with,
Mhm.
neurons and what's happening with the electron transport chain, and what's happening for healing the brain and all of this stuff. But then also just realizing how, I maybe I'll say this right or wrong. Our pineal gland, or not, is
Pineal
it
gland.
pineal
Yeah, yeah.
that
Pineal
is like
gland.
the kind of almost our
That's,
antenna for the electronic magnetic field and
yeah.
everything. But now I understand how, just folks, she did a tiny little thing telling me things before we started
Mhm.
recording that,
Mhm.
about that she nailed exactly dead on. And you're in Arizona, I'm here in Wisconsin. So
Yeah.
now, after putting hundreds of hours of getting my brain around much of this, it makes perfect sense to me. But 2016 Brett would say 2024 Brett is batshit crazy, because I wasn't yet open to receiving and understanding all of
Right.
these different things. And most of it's actually rooted in quantum physics, if you
It
really
is.
dig deep enough into
It is.
that this is all Einstein stuff.
It is.
And Einstein talked and wrote about these kinds of things. So it's just
Absolutely.
been really fascinating for me. So
Well,
I'm just
Brett,
like, now
yeah,
I get it.
you're really opening, I think, what could be a whole nother interview and podcast, because this is part of my specialty to share and teach about. I do teach Reiki. I'm actually creating a digital version. And you go, well, how can you transmit the Reiki um, attunements if I'm downloading this digitally? It's because when we do this work, and I've studied a lot of shamanism with many shamanic cultures and teachers. I spent a summer in Peru, time in Hawaii, studying with kahunas and shaman. I've trained with spiritualists, mediums, and because you can always hone your craft. And I like to learn from those thought leaders like Greg Braden, and as you mentioned, and many others, Alberto Vioto and others, that we work outside of space and time. With time, we think of as linear and space. It's a human earth realm concept, but we can step out of that. And energy, well, they've proven this with those reactors, where they'll have one over in Japan and one in New Mexico, and the electron or that they shoot through the one in New Mexico affects the one in Japan. Well, how the heck does that work? It's
The quantum
because
entanglement between the
the
two
quantum
particles.
entanglement. And that explains exactly how the Reiki works, in the shamanic healing, in the connection with the spirit world works. If we can expand our awareness, our consciousness, and let go of our BS, our belief systems, and be
Let
open
go of
to
Brett Smith. Just let him go.
but the one caveat I do want to put in here is what I have found and partly why I haven't been on interviews or done much yet with my YouTube channel, and that's going to change. It is changing. I'm changing the energy around all this, is because in my field, the holistic realm, there's such a big belief that if you eat meat, you're going to get clogged up, and your energy field won't be as spiritual. You won't be able to give good readings. That you should only, like Alberto Vioto, who I really admire. I've gone through his whole Four Winds shamanic medicine training years ago. I did a whole bunch of years of study with him. I really admire him, but he believes you should only eat red meat once a week, even though he believes in keto. And then you have even Greg Braden pushes you towards plant-based with, some fish, but you minimize red meat. And I really respect these guys, but they've got it. Where's this coming from? Why is red
Well,
meat so
you can be so open-minded about some things, but still have dogma that you have to
Yes.
work through that you haven't gotten through yet. Just
I
like
was
me
taught,
with this, what I just confessed to
yeah,
you.
yeah. I was taught when I was first, many years ago, doing some of my first training in doing angel readings. The woman teaching it, she was quite well known, and she told us all, you need to become vegetarian or vegan, because if you're not going to give good readings. You're going to be all clogged up. You do not want to eat animal meat. People call it dead flesh, and how I believed that for a while until my body started telling me otherwise, and my own team of spirit guides. And yes, that's my belief system. I have angels, spirit guides, power animals, um, healers from my different lineages, from my Mesa carrier lineage, from my Reiki lineage, Hawaiian Kahuna lineage. They come in and they assist. And I was guided over the years that this was eating vegetarian was not good for my brain and body. So that's why I didn't stick with it. And that I feel like I've really been led to this by my team of guides, as much as by my higher self, by that God, greater God self. And I've listened to it. That doesn't make me better than anybody else. It's just becoming more aware that there are other possibilities, that there might be a different way than what that author and that thought leader and that person that said, oh, you should try vegan, that they haven't researched it. They don't know the biochemistry of it. And it really is, no matter what therapies you do. And believe me, I did my shamanic journeys. I did self Reiki. I got lots of massage. And these issues with my body still would not clear up. I was at that point before 2018. What the H am I going to do here? I needed the right fuel. That was the change. And so if we can, all of us in this community, be loving and non-judgmental and just get the word out, knowing that maybe 1 in 100 will come and discover it, and then eventually 1 in 50, and then maybe 1 in 10, and eventually we'll have that 100th monkey syndrome, right? Where the light bulb goes on in the consciousness of our world and of the medical community, and things will shift, things will flip. I truly believe that. It may take time, but
I believe it's happening. I believe humanity's coming to that point, because
yeah,
as long as you don't only pay attention to mainstream media and you pay attention to independent media stuff, for the last 5 years, there's been hundred thousands and tens of thousands of people protest in countries all around the world. Our media just doesn't show it to us because they don't want it happening here unless it's George Floyd related. But I believe there's a consciousness coming, and that most of these institutions are imploding upon themselves. And it's really the internet and the ability for people to communicate, and you and I to have these conversations, and maybe someday thousands of people will have listened to this one episode. Not anytime soon, because I only have 350 subscribers at the moment.
hey,
But
the momentum, you have the momentum, Brett, and you have that love in your heart of really desiring to help people. And when you have that, when you're in that place of I really want to help, believe me, it's going to happen. People are going to be drawn to you because you're authentic, you're genuine. This isn't fake anything. You truly want people to feel better in their bodies, and you know how to help them. So,
once you understand it, you can't unsee it. You just can't look away when you know and understand it. You can't pretend and put the genie back in the bottle. It just will not go.
Yeah, yeah. And we all have our own inner physician. In craniosacral, that's actually what we call it. That inner physician that resides within us, that inner knowing. And if you take the time to tap into that knowing of, okay, I could try this. I could turn to Brett. I could come get a reading from Carol. I could turn to Ken Berry and join his group, or I could follow Kelly Hogan or Carrie from Homestead How, or reach out
We're
to
doing,
Dave.
Carrie and I are doing interviews with each other
Yeah,
in 2 weeks. He's interviewing me on the 12th and I'm interviewing him on the 14th. So.
He's got such good energy. He just gets it out there, and he's not.
God, is this guy driven or what?
Yeah, yeah. But we are the people that are going to help hold the space and encourage and hold the hands of those people that say, we want the change, we're just afraid. We've been told otherwise, and we're unsure. And can you help us, please? And we're the ones, not that, like I said, we're not any better than, we're just in this journey, we've gone through it, and we can share the experience, and we can say, you're going to be okay. You are. It all works out. And you can't believe when you get to the other side of this, how much better you'll feel. But words don't convey that. You have to experience it. And that's why I always recommend 90 days and reach out to somebody like you, Brett, or join a community. I know Anthony Chafee, Ken Berry, they all have these communities you can join. Find one of those, do that, take that next action step. Don't just sit there taking your and yes, you might need your medication. We're not telling you to get off those. We're just saying, start researching, listen to that inner voice that says, I want to feel better. I want to get out there and kick the ball with my grandkids. I want to go swim in the pool or the ocean. I want to go fly across the world and travel. I want to find my next partner in life, whatever it is. And having that baseline of good nutrition, that being in ketosis, don't be afraid of it. That's what your body wants, your brain. Every cell in your body is asking for that. So I know I might sound a little preachy, but it's just.
No. But I think it's a great place that you just kind of wrapped a lot of it up.
Yeah.
You've done a beautiful job of wrapping it all up. And I think that makes a great landing place. And also, I don't know if people are noticing, I've noticed a little latency issue with my technology going on. I think we'll be fine recording wise. But Carol, I can't thank you enough for joining me here. I can't wait for us to keep talking. I'm going to sign off now. And you'll be able to find Carol if you'd like to do any of the things she mentioned she does. Her website and contact information will be in the show notes. So look below. If you're still here now, an hour and 36 minutes later, and you haven't already hit the like button, please hit the like button. If you know people that could benefit from the topics we talked about, please share the podcast with them. But hang with me for Carol for a second here as I sign it off. We'll keep talking, but thank you so much. I just really love going into all of this. It was just so beautiful. So Carol, I know we'll have you back on again, and as your stuff grows, we'll go down that path too. And everybody, come back again. I'm recording again tomorrow. Great day and a great night. And join us again on My Metabolic Life soon. Have a great day.